Good evening, everyone. John Elgar here with the New York Times, back for another edition of Race Night, our weekly conversations about race. And once again, I'm joined by my co-host, Rachel Swarns. Rachel, good evening. How are you doing?
Hey, John. Nice to see you.
Nice to see you again, too. And I'm very excited for this evening. We have a very interesting and special topic to talk about tonight, and we're talking about Childish Gambino's video, This is America. And, I guess it can simply be summed up by saying, what's it about? This is what people are debating. People have been, talking about. People have been arguing. What does this mean? What does the horse mean? What does the guy with the hood on mean? Like, what do all these things mean? And I don't know that anyone has the real answers, but we got some very interesting people to talk about it with us tonight. And we're happy to be joined by David Pilgrim. David is the curator and founder of the Jim Crow Museum at Ferris State University. David, how are you doing?
I'm doing fine. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for joining us. And I also want to let people know David's outside, so you might hear some birds and whatnot chirping, but that just adds to the atmosphere of the conversation. So I hope you enjoy it. And I'm also glad to be joined by Julia Craven. Julia is a reporter for HuffPost. She covers race and culture. Julia, how are you doing?
I'm good.
Good. Thanks for being with us. And last but not least, we have Eric Deggans, who is a TV critic at NPR. Eric, how are you doing?
Doing wonderful.
Doing great. Well, thank you all for joining us, and I want to thank our viewers for watching. And if you have any questions, any comments, if you want to put in your hot take on the video, please put them in the comment section, and we'll try to read some of them. And first of all, I want to start off with you, Julia. Just tell me, what were you and your friends saying when this came out? What were you all talking about when you first saw this video?
The group chat was kind of split about it. Some people liked it, some people didn't, but I think we all appreciated the artistry and we all appreciated the deeper meanings in the video. But overall, some people liked it and some people didn't. I liked it.
What'd you like about it?
I liked how it kind of felt like someone had actually given making a point a shot. And I know that may sound a little weird, but I feel like a lot of times when we see music, when we see artistry, unless it's something like Lemonade, people aren't making a point like Donald Glover is in This Is America. So
It was that blend of kind of art and activism that got you there.
Yes, that's a good way to put it.
Yeah. And you did a piece, obviously, about this, and you talked to David about this. I wonder, David, everyone's talking about, the symbolism there. Tell us a little bit about what you thought when you saw it.
Well, let me start by saying that what I wish I had said differently in the article, because my emails have just blown up. And
yours too.
Apparently, I've made every black dancer in America angry, which was not my intention. What I should have said is that dance can be an act of resistance, and it can be a way of facilitating healing. But when I watched the video, I just couldn't get past at least viewing the dance as a kind of metaphor for the apathy that we have at the premature deaths of black people.
And I mean, you say you can't get past that. I mean, some people might say that's kind of the point of it, right? That in society, it's a distraction. That's the one thing, people like to see black people do is dance, right?
Yes.
How do you square that, David? I mean, isn't that kind of like, that could be one of the points of it, one of the strong points?
Well, I don't doubt it. I don't want to get biblical here, but I actually do believe there's a time to dance and a time to mourn. If my memory serves correctly, I am a good dancer. I have style and I'm agile.
All right.
That's supposed to be a joke, by the way. But
we believe it.
Well, that's a little delayed reaction on that. I see a society that has injustice as a part of its core. And if you look back over the decades, we have instances, whether it's a lynching or the O.J. Simpson trial or a piece of art, where people stop for a while They stopped shopping. They stopped going to the library. They stopped dancing. You can use any of those things as metaphors. They stop, and just for a second they pause, and then we go right back to the orderly flow of our society, which unfortunately includes the victimization and brutalization of black people.
Yeah, Eric, what did you think when you saw it?
Well, first of all, the first time I saw it, I was like, I can't believe that this brother can do all this. I mean, he's already,
He is a pretty
I mean,
talented
he's
guy.
already, he's created an amazing television show. He's a great writer. He's a great actor. He's very funny. He hosted this great episode of Saturday Night Live, and then he drops this video where he's dancing incredibly well, and he's dropped all of this commentary in our lap to let us kind of figure it out. Maybe because I'm here in St. Petersburg where the Dali Museum is, but it reminded me of some of the paintings of Salvador Dali in that he presents you with these images, and then you have to decide what you make of them in a large measure. And I loved that about it. I do think it's very much about this idea that as black people, even when we're celebrating, even when we're dancing, even when we're having the most fun, we are never very far away from violence. We're never very far away from oppression, and we're never very far away from death, sometimes inflicted by our own people. And that seems to be a consistent theme throughout the video. And I thought it was very poignant. I thought it was something that was worth saying now, particularly in the age of Trump. And I love the fact that he's not telling us what it means, that he's letting us figure it out.
And I like how he plays with like emotions in the sense that it starts off, you see dancing, and you're thinking like there's a kind of a mystery to it. You're like, okay, he's standing with his shirt off, starts to dance. You're kind of like, oh, I can kind of move to this a little bit, but then he whips out that gun and shoots the person in the head, and right away it kind of grabs you, and you're like, what direction is this going? And I think playing with that tension, playing with our emotions was really it was very shrewd to do that, I thought.
I wonder if we could talk a little bit about the violence, because that really, and for our viewers who haven't seen it, and you should all take a look. It is, we're talking about, or he's talking about gun violence, but in very sudden, abrupt, graphic ways. The choir, you've got an African American choir, and gunned down. I don't know. I'm curious to hear your take on the violence. Obviously, it speaks to kind of what is all around us, but some people have said, was it gratuitous? Was it too much? I don't know.
I don't think we'd be talking about this video if it didn't have that violence in it, to be honest.
Yeah.
It's almost a slap across the face, in a way, to shock us into paying attention to the juxtapositions that he's trying to present, where, I mean, it starts out as almost joyous, and you think you're going to hear a song that's celebratory, and then the violence happens, and you're like, what am I seeing? And then if you know a little bit about Jim Crow and the imagery of Jim Crow, from the expressions on his face to the pose that he strikes right before he shoots the guy with the bag on his head, in his head, then you see, oh my God, that's Jim Crow. These are very famous. He's mimicking very famous imagery from that character. So it was a lot to take in. I had to watch it 2 or 3 times to really make sure I was seeing what I thought I was seeing.
And speaking of Jim Crow, I'm glad we have the founder and curator of the Jim Crow Museum here with us. David, can you step back and give us a little bit of that history, how we saw Jim Crow in the video?
Well, again, I think it is correct to say that he adopted the stance of Thomas Rice, or at least the stance of Thomas Rice on a very well-known piece of sheet music. As I said in the article, I think some of the dancing is representative of what you would see in in some Jim Crow era dancing. I've been told and have seen, though, that there are a number of people that are sort of claiming that South African dance, African sort of political dance and the like. I did not actually see as much other than some connections that I could make with minstrel shows. And again, I want to be honest, I think I might fall in the same trap that some other people do, which, or trap is probably too strong a word, but fall into the same tendency, which is here you have a guy who's given you a canvas where he's created as many symbols as you'd find, in any place other than the book of Revelations. And so we bring with us our perspectives. And I'm a person who spent the better part of my adult life studying Jim Crow, studying the ways that black people were defamed and belittled during that period. And so I might have a kind of hypersensitivity to that. Now, having said that, some of the things that I would have, that there are some things that would have been easier to assign to Jim Crow. For example, the clothing and the like. That was not a part of it. The speaking, the messaging was, not as Jim Crow-like as, at least in my opinion, is what I'm hearing some other people say. So back to one of your original comments, I think there is, I think this is not just provocative. I think it is actually, in some ways, a work of genius. But I also think it's genius in the sense that it allows people, the same way when people come into the Jim Crow Museum, they don't just come to the objects. The objects don't just come to them. They bring their racial ideas, their ideas about what it means to be black or what it means to be white. They bring that into the museum. And so myself, and I imagine most people who see this, we bring our racial stuff to the video. And I actually think, I'd love to talk to him, but I think that was one of the things he was trying to do.
We'd like to ask our viewers, because I'm sure you're bringing all your racial stuff to this too. We'd love to hear your questions and your thoughts about this. And I know, Julia, that was one of the points you made, that this people were going to be bringing, it is, of course, it speaks to America. It's called This Is America, but it's very personal in a way too, right? That was one of the points you made in the piece you wrote.
Yeah, I think that the beauty of art is that we all feel differently about it. And it's like David was saying, Donald Glover kind of gave us this unfinished canvas where we can project how we feel onto it. We can look at the allusion to the Charleston massacre and be like, wow, that's a very powerful way to make a statement about gun violence. Or we can look at that and be offended. And both of those things are okay. The overall point of the video to me is that it's meant to be provocative. It's meant to make people think. It's meant to jolt a reaction out of you. And that's why I think that in this instance, the violence is useful. Sometimes violence can be very tasteless in videos, movies, etc. But I think in this instance, it is actually being used very purposefully. And it's just drawing things out of people. It's drawing all of these think pieces and all these different tweets, and people are noticing the historical aspects and all this different stuff. So if anything, us being distracted by all of the reaction to it is also kind of part of the point too.
Julia, one thing you mentioned too is that there was some debate you had with your friends over should it have been a white person doing the killing. Can you talk about that? Like, what's the debate there about?
Basically, I have a friend who felt as though the point kind of got lost because the shooter wasn't white. Whereas for me personally, if it was a white shooter, I wouldn't have been able. We would be having a completely different conversation. I would be sitting up here trashing Donald Glover and the video and talking about how he's not genius and we should cancel him. So that would be my reaction.
Why is that?
It's traumatizing. I think to watch a white shooter go through and commit all of these acts of violence is traumatizing. At least for me it is.
Yeah. You know what I wonder too? I mean, it's called, of course, This Is America, but it's kind of course, all about what each individual sees. And I wondered in that, again, you just bring whatever you bring, but I wondered in that scene whether or not you know, there are so many people who will look at a thing like the Charleston massacre, and still we see this in comments all the time, be talking about, well, why are you talking about that? Why aren't you talking about, you know, black on black violence? That's really the issue here. You know, so that was something that popped into my mind too. Is often it's easier for some people, instead of looking at, you know, the history of racial violence in this country, it's easier to say, when you talk about gun violence, to say, well, you know, well, look at black on black violence. And I wondered if that was, you know, anyway.
I would say, from my standpoint, I think he's constantly giving us different images that mean different things. And so what he represents at one point in the video may represent something else at another point in the video. And so I think one reason why it was good that he didn't have a white person doing it is because I do think a lot of people would have reacted badly to that. But I think part of it, too, is that he's saying a lot of different things by having himself be the instrument of all these things that happen in this video. So in one moment, I feel like he's America. And then in the next moment, I feel like he's black America. And then the next moment, I feel like he's white America. You know, depending on the context of the image and what's happening when he's doing something. And that's also what's also so interesting to about this to me is that, you know, what he represents kind of shifts as the video plays out. And then towards the end, you get this commentary that's almost, you know, he's chased by this crowd. It's hard to tell who they are or what they are. Some people have said it's a lynch mob. Some people have said it's like the sunken place from Get Out. I also saw a little bit of what he's been talking about in Atlanta this year, which is his fans chasing him and the people who admire him. And what that does to an artist when you have to open yourself up to people who love you and yet still want a piece of you. So I, you know, I love this video because there's so many. He's saying so many different things at once.
I want to get to a quick comment or question from one of our viewers. Jose A. Fabian says it's a good corporate product that generated marketing to sell. Oh, I'm supposed to think this is going to be the origin for societal progress. Eric, I want to talk about it. Like stepping back, I mean, it seems like Jose is having doubts as to whether videos or, you know, media like this can be some sort of origin for more. I mean, you cover TV. I mean, can you speak to that? I mean, these things can have a certain impact, or can they?
Well, I mean, in the end, yeah, it is a product, but you're not going to get a video with great music and great lyrics if he can't make money off of it. So, I mean, at some point, it has to be a product. But to say that somehow cheapens the message, which is the implication of that message, I think that's absolutely not the case. I mean, it's obvious that if Donald Glover really wanted to cash in, he would not have made a video like this. He could have made a much more commercial video that would have, you know, made a lot more money and a lot less controversy. But he's trying to be an artist while he's also trying to create products that will let him earn a living. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that.
We got another question from Jezebel Strong. Says, what does the panel think of watching the video just concentrating on the background? Have any of you all done that? Just concentrating on the background? I haven't done that, so I'm curious.
Well, I have done that.
Yes.
I have done that where I just turned the sound off and just look behind, and that's one of the points that I get from it, which is that no matter what we're doing as peoples of color, the message for me, at least in parts, was that there's death, there's destruction, there's belittlement, there's degradation that surrounds us, and sometimes it's chaotic, and sometimes it actually looks a little more organized, but that it's just ever present.
Well, unfortunately, I think we are running out of time now, so I think we're gonna have to cut this short, unfortunately. But before I go, one more question for each of our guests. Yanny or Laurel? Which one was it? Julia?
Yanny.
Eric?
I was afraid to listen. I don't want to know. I know I'm old. I know I can't hear nothing, so I don't need to find that out.
You probably saw the white dress, didn't you?
I sure did.
David, did you listen to the Yanny or Laurel thing? What did you see? What did you hear?
Yeah, I'm gonna pass on that one.
Rachel, what about you?
Me too.
The old heads on the call. We know enough to not.
I am one of those people. I started hearing something that sounded like Yanni first. It wasn't exactly. Then I turned the direction of my phone and the different pitch. It turned out to be Laurel, and now I cannot not hear Laurel. So that's where I stand. We'll have more on that next week, though. But seriously, I want to thank our guests, Eric, Julia, and David for joining us. I want to thank all of our viewers for watching. I want to remind you that we want to keep the conversation about race going. So please go to nytimes.com/race-related. Sign up for our weekly newsletter about race. You get all sorts of content from New York Times journalists, and the best part about it is that we want to hear back from you. We send you questions, we do call-outs, we want to know what important topics you want to talk about in this very important discussion about race. So once again, our guests, thank you very much. Rachel speaking to you as always, and we will see you all next week.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
See you next week.